The kilometers flew by as the convoy raced south, drawing the flying column of toilets away. The plan was working, but the amount of skibidis was becoming overwhelming. They had lost the one full jeep of men, and another plucked from one of the Dongfeng. Everyone that was not driving was firing wildly out of the vehicles, trying to scrape the skibidis away as they rammed and bashed the sides of the vehicles. A V-shape of skibidis emerged in the distance, heading straight for the Humvee Brittany was driving. The smashing of porcelain and the splattering of blood could be heard as she rammed full speed into them. The front end of the vehicle smashed, the radiator leaked coolant, the vehicle began to smoke and lose power. Flames erupted from under the hood as the vehicle stopped. Kuro Silk leapt out the back, slicing down several pursuing skibidis. Ryoko dropped the bipod on her rifle on the trunk of the Humvee and began firing, dropping several skibidis. She turned her sights on one of the larger flying toilets and began firing. After taking several rounds, it began to list to one side and crashed to the ground. Brittany dismounted as well and took up a firing position just outside the door. She looked up at the coming toilets and realized the whole column had pursued them. "Well, I think my plan worked better than expected," she said. Lex turned the Humvee he was driving and slid to a stop perpendicular to Brittany's disabled one. He pulled out his revolver and began firing. The tires on Mickey's Dongfeng EQ 2050 shredded on the shards of broken porcelain, blowing out all four tires. The vehicle began to sway wildly and lose control, tossing the soldiers in the rear from their seats and out onto the ground. Mickey controlled the vehicle long enough to bring it to a stop. A massive skibidi landed on the front end, crushing it, as Mickey and Akon jumped out and ran. The two remaining Dongfeng EQ 2050s encircled the disabled one, and the soldiers jumped out to dispatch the massive skibidi and protect Mickey and Akon. The U.S. Army jeeps bringing up the rear were now fast approaching skibidis in hot pursuit. The skibidis slammed into the rear of one, causing it to fishtail and slam into a large rock. The skibidis were on the occupants before they could recover. If any had survived the crash was unknown. It all happened too fast and slaughtered them all. The last jeep had a skibidi leap onto the hood, and with its long neck reach around and pull the driver out and toss him under the front of the jeep. The soldier in the passenger seat quickly leaned over, head and arms down by the pedals, and slammed on the brake. The skibidi flew off forward, smashing on the remains of the first jeep, before this jeep slammed into it as well at a reduced survivable speed. The soldiers then ran to Mickey and the others. The survivors then realized they were in a large dirt clearing. The skibidi advance slowed, and their sickening cry grew in number and volume as they slowly slid forward. "What do we do now?" cried Mikaru. "I don't know," answered Brittany in a low voice. "Well, who's ready for that blaze of glory?" said Jin as he leaned over the hood of the Humvee ready to fire. Skibidis burst forward, chomping at them, held back by the vehicles, now being used as barricades. They fought the toilets off, but not before they were able to disable the remaining working vehicles. Kuro Silk sliced the head of a skibidi off as it stretched around the rear of the Humvee. She then kicked it away, only to hear the scream of two of the soldiers from the jeep, as they were snagged and dragged off before anyone could help. Then the muffled screams of some of the Chinese soldiers, as they too were grabbed by the heads on outstretched necks and dragged out into the wasteland between the toilets and the humans. More necks outstretched as the heads reached in a large group and bloodily disemboweled the soldiers. The skibidis formed a line, large vehicle-sized ones in front, with the normal-sized ones coming up behind, their final push. "This is it," shouted Jin. Ryoko stroked Mikaru's hair as she pulled out a side arm and aimed it at the back of Mikaru's head, ready to make good on her promise. Brittany drew her pistol as well and held the barrel against her right cheek, contemplating what she was going to do. Massive explosions then rocked the toilets in front of them, stunning the toilets and injuring a few of them. Behind the group on a grass-covered dirt berm stood a man dressed in tight-fitting black tactical dress with protective guards. Medium-length brown hair, brown eyes, white skin. He held a M32A 140mm MSGL, multiple-shot grenade launcher. The round spent, he dropped it to the ground and picked up a Heckler & Koch MP5 submachine gun with suppressor and Picatinny rail. He began firing in bursts. He fired, stopped, aimed in another direction, fired, burst again, and again, picking off the normal-size skibidis as he advanced down the berm. The skibidis still stunned from the grenade attack, some of the large ones dead or wounded. He advanced methodically, picking his targets. He stopped firing and lowered his gun and stood up straight. "On me, on me, on me," he shouted. He raised his gun up again and fired off bursts, again picking off his selected targets. The group looked at each other for a split moment. Brittany nodded her head, and they all took off running towards the man.